If you're facing time in federal prison, one of the first things you're going to be concerned about is, when am I going to put this behind me? When am I going to get out? And there are so many factors that go into that consideration, including what is your sentence length? When are you going to surrender? How much good time will you earn? Will you qualify for RDAP? Will you participate in programs that result in advancing your release date through the First Step Act and earned time credits? These are all important considerations, and they're considerations that a lot of people don't understand while they're in prison, much less before they go to prison. I am Michael Santos. I served 26 years in federal prison, and really everybody on our team strives to help all justice-impacted people make better decisions, understand what's coming. And that's why we've invested the time to build this awesome calculator that I'm super excited to share with you. If I could just find the right section on my screen, there we are. That is the homepage of our website. And if I go to, you've probably seen our website before at Prison Professors. This is a bigger version of it. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to scroll through there, look on the different tabs to help. Today's blog includes the newest tool that we just created called Good Time Calculators Earned Time Credits. And this will help people project release date. And the important term here is project. Now, to project release dates, we've got to understand a great deal about how the system operates. And it starts in this era of the First Step Act with this concept of a risk assessment. The Bureau of Prisons now has had to change its focus thanks to the First Step Act, where there is more emphasis on helping people emerge successfully. And to do that, Congress has mandated that leaders at the Bureau of Prisons create these risk assessment tools to kind of assess whether the person is likely to engage in crime again. And there are two different risk assessments. One is for males and one is for females. So if you click on, it's also going to appear on our advocacy page, but if it's just because it's today's blog, and I'll be doing a webinar on this later today. If you click on it, you're going to see these two buttons here. One is to click for males, one is to click for females. I'm a male. I want to take you through a demonstration about what it means. So the top part of this page is going to talk a little bit about the importance of earned time credits. Not everybody is eligible to earn earned time credits. There is a link here that will show a list of offenses that are considered disqualifying offenses, and you should check and see if your offense is a disqualifying offense for earned time credits. There are other benefits of this product, of this program, the First Step Act, but with regard to earned time credits, you really want to just make sure if you're a nonviolent person, it's most likely that you're going to qualify. And then there's going to be more information here. We try to provide accurate information. So this is a link that's going to take you to the Bureau of Prisons, information on the First Step Act. Then if you want to get updated information, we encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter. But most importantly, you want to find out, well, what is going to be my risk assessment? If I'm a male, they use the risk assessment tool called the pattern. And you've got to insert a series of both static and dynamic information. So I'm going to go through and show you the difference first, how my pattern score would have changed from the time that I started my journey in prison, which was 1987, to the time I got out of federal prison. So I'm going to start by saying I was under 26 years old. I don't have a sex offense, so I would have clicked no right there. I don't have a history of violence, so I would click no there. I didn't have any criminal history points, so I would click no there. I didn't have a history of escapes, so I would click no there. I didn't have any history, again, of violence. They asked me that twice. But that's just the way the Bureau of Prisons works. So there's history of violence, says none. Education score, I did have a high school diploma when I started prison. I didn't have a need for substance abuse training because I didn't have any history of substance abuse, despite being a cocaine trafficker when I was a kid. How many incident reports? Well, I would have had none because I was just starting in the Bureau of Prisons. and I would add no serious incident reports. How much time passed? Again, these are important variables that the Bureau of Prisons considers on whether somebody's likely to reoffend. Have you participated in FRP? I have. So this is asking if I've ever been in refusal status. So no, I've never been in refusal status. And then it's asking me how many programs have I completed? Well, none, because I would have just been coming into the prison system. Are you participating in work programs? And it would be 0 at that point. This, remember, is the start. And this button here will now calculate the score. And it shows that even all those things, I am a low. I would have been considered a low minimum, a low pattern on the pattern. And that is really significant because somebody who scores a low is only eligible to receive 10 days a month for participating in programs. But at least he's eligible. If it's a medium or a high, that person's not eligible for anything. So if I were to now continue on with this situation here, please insert the sentence length in months. Well, I'm not going to put my sentence length, which was 45 years. Let's just put a more moderate one in there and say 120 months. At 10 years in the Bureau of Prisons is not considered a long sentence. So it's important to realize that because you want to have some perspective of how the system is going to categorize you and what steps you can take to advocate for yourself as you're going into this system. So if I had a 120-month sentence and I started that sentence on, let's just say 07, 01, 2021, I can now project when is my release date. Did I serve any time in jail? Well, I would just enter a number there in number 3. Okay, so sometimes somebody just goes and pleads guilty and they spend 15 minutes in court and getting fingerprinted and that kind of thing. That counts as 1 day in jail. But other people sit in jail for weeks or months waiting to get a bond, and all of that time counts. So let's just put 25 days, okay? Unfortunately, somebody had to serve 25 days in jail before they got out on pretrial. Are you 60 years or older? Well, this is relevant because if you're 60 years or older, you can qualify for the elderly offender program, which can result in it can have an impact on your release date. But I am not 60 years older, so I will put no. And do you qualify for the RDAP program? Well, I wrote no before, so I'm going to stay with no. I don't qualify. And so then I can just hit this little thing, view summation of projections. And there you have it. So it's going to start calculating that I have 3,650 days to serve. It's going to calculate that I have a projected amount of statutory good time you will receive in months. Well, that means I'm going to receive 18 months off. That's a year and a half. And that's what you would qualify for if you had a 10-year sentence by statutory good time. It's 15% of the sentence. So on 3650, I would get, I'm going to just look at that math for a moment there. 3,000, so it's 10 years. 10 years, I'm going to get a year and a half off. That's 15%. That's 18 months, a year and a half, correct. Okay, so the projected amount of statutory good time converted to days is I would get 547 days off of my sentence with regard to statutory good time. In statutory good time, everybody gets it simply by avoiding disciplinary infractions and if you have a GED, you also have to if you don't have a GED, you also have to participate in the GED program to get the maximum amount of good times. But see, these are projections, and it's important to recognize that these are projections. And we'll talk a little bit about the significance of talking about them as projections later. We're then going to go to the projected release date, including statutory good time and jail credit, but without consideration for RDAP based on the inputs above. So the projected release date based on those inputs would be November 30th of 2029. The projected release date, including statutory good time, jail time, would be 11/30/2020. So that's including all of the good time, all of the jail credit, successful completion of RDAP. In this case, it would be 0 because this guy didn't qualify. And based on the inputs above, he would have it November 30th, 28. Projected full term would be 2031. So full term means he didn't get any of these benefits. Okay, that's a significant difference. It's 2028 to 2031. So it's important to recognize that. The 2/3 date would only apply to people who are over 60 years old, and you would see that date as being January of 28. So you want to calculate all of these things because this is what will influence your decisions while you're going in. Now, there are additional provisions that somebody has to be taking into consideration when they are projecting release dates, and that includes the Second Chance Act. The Second Chance Act is somewhat of a misnomer because it was passed in 2008 and it relates somewhat to the First Step Act. Logically, somebody without experience would think, well, why isn't the first step and the second step? Well, the Second Chance Act passed in 2008. President Bush signed it, and basically all it didn't affect good time at all, but it did authorize the Bureau of Prisons to allow people to serve the final 12 months of the sentence in a residential reentry center. And if their sentence was 60 months or longer, they could serve 6 months of the 12 months on home confinement. If their sentence was less than 60 months, they could only serve 10% of the sentence on home confinement. In this case, remember, we plugged in there as a model that the guy had a 10-year sentence, so he could serve up to 6 months on home confinement and 6 months in the halfway house. So based on those inputs, that person would be transitioning or eligible to transition to a halfway house in May of 2030. The person would be eligible to go to home confinement 6 months later in November of 2030. And you can see that May 2030 is going to be 1 year less than the anticipated release date up here is where it should calculate. This says projected release date is 2029. Looks like we're going to have to do some tweaking. This is the first draft of this calendar, but projected release date. Oh, I see. So this is release date from the Bureau of Prisons. This is not a release date. This is when the person would be eligible to go to the halfway house. That's why that's a later date than this date up here. Okay, the person will complete the sentence here, but they're going to be eligible to go to the halfway house here. So they're still in the BOP. Again, I will be looking at these calculations later today. I just wanted to give this explanation of what these mean. So this is a transition to the halfway house under the Second Chance Act, and this is when the person would qualify for home confinement. Then we want to go to the First Step Act and the earned time credits. This is significant because it is different from good time because the person has to complete a month. There's a few variables. One, the person has to be eligible for earned time credits. And some offenses don't qualify. As it shows there's that disqualifying link. If you click that, you're going to be able to see what doesn't qualify. A second component is going to be, is the person scoring either a low or a minimum on the pattern? Because they have different functions, right? If somebody scores a low on pattern, which is what this person scored, they're going to receive 10 days off of the sentence for every month that they program while they are a low. If somebody has a minimum score, okay, they are going to get 15 days off per month for every month that they are programming. And the logical suggestion is, well, I'm going to program every month of the 120 months, but that's not accurate. You can't do that because your sentence is going to come down. You can receive up to 12 months off of your release date for program participation. So every time you complete a month of programming as a minimum, you're going to get 15 days off of your sentence. That means for every 2 months, you're going to get a month off of your sentence. So if I have a 120-month sentence, I can't do 120 months because I'm going to be lowering my sentence. If I have a low, I'm only going to get 10 days off my sentence. So you kind of have to do these projections here. Also, if you're out of prison, you may not be able to participate in these programs. If you can't get from a low to a minimum until you've served a couple of years, because of no fault of your own, it's just you're not old enough, right? The risk assessment measures your propensity to commit crime based on your age. So somebody who goes into prison when they're 23 is going to have a different score than somebody who goes into prison when they're 55. And we have to take those factors into consideration. But if we do, let's just say, I think I'll be a minimum for 25 months of programming, and I think I will be a low for 25 months of programming. That's going to give me my total number of days. So wow, this person got 625 earned time credits. That's a total of 20.55 months. But of those 20 months, only 12 months result in a time cut. So there's a remainder of 8 months, 8.5 months. Well, what that means is the 12 months will be added to any other time credits I get, including statutory good time, jail credits, if I participated in RDAP right there. And you could take that from the 120-month sentence, and that's what you can kind of project to serve in prison, 77 months. But because you have I've got to look at this because this doesn't predict transfer from prison. But because you have a remainder of 8, those 8 are going to supersede the 6 months here that you could go to a halfway house. And so you'd be able to go to a halfway house even sooner. So you'd take another 8 months out of that, and that's when you would transfer to prison. I can see that I've got to talk to my tech guy there because that number doesn't compute, and we want to make sure that we're computing that number. So that's what I wanted to share with you about our calculator, which I think you will find very helpful. I will say that we will be tweaking it periodically. You'll be able to find it always in our advocacy page and in our after sentencing page on our free resources. We really strive to help you help yourself, and it's important to always remember you've got to be your best self-advocate. Although Congress has mandated legislation that allows the Bureau of Prisons to do things, although the president may have signed a bill into law, sometimes it takes a lot of advocacy, a lot of personal advocacy, a lot of litigation to get the benefit. I mean, I was in prison for 26 years, and when I went to prison, they just passed what's now commonly known as the new law. Well, when they initially passed the new law, which are the sentencing guidelines, they ruled that it was a mandatory, that judges had to follow the guidelines. It took more than 10 years of litigation before they turned into becoming advisory. The guidelines are advisory. So it's more possible now to advocate for yourself. Both at sentencing, but now with the First Step Act, it's also more possible to advocate for yourself once you get into the Bureau of Prisons. But just because it's possible doesn't mean it's going to happen. And that's the reason you have to be really focused on learning about how the system operates, about developing a really comprehensive release plan. And in our program, so I'll give you an example of what a great release plan should look like. But you have to build this. Nobody can do it for you. Nobody can advocate for you once you're in the system. Your lawyer won't be able to help you because you've transitioned out of the judicial branch of government into the executive branch of government, and there is a mechanism that the executive branch of government has mandated to resolve disputes. That's called administrative remedy. Until you resolve all administrative remedy problems, you cannot go back to court. So you have to understand this system, understand what steps you can start taking today to sow seeds for a better outcome. And I never ask anybody to do anything that I didn't do. I really had to advocate for myself, but I was going through 26 years in prison. You may only be going through a year in prison. You may be going through 3 months in prison. I'm not going to diminish the severity of that to you and to your family. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you, or what our team is going to do, is show you the tools you can develop to advocate for yourself so that you can get the best possible outcome, or rather position yourself for the best possible outcome. You may still have to advocate. You may still have to fight. But if you don't know the rules, you can't fight. So make sure that you learn. We try to provide as much information as we possibly can. We create it every day, and we send it into the Bureau of Prisons to help members of our community. We would like you to learn how to help yourself. And that's what I had to share with you today. I am Michael Santos, and on behalf of our entire team at Prison Professors, we want to thank you for being a part of our community. If you're watching this on YouTube or on iTunes, please subscribe to our channel. If you're listening to it on iTunes, visit us at prisonprofessors.com so that you can see these tools in action and use them for yourself. Thanks so much for being a part of the Prison Professors community.